Now, another design time capability that you can leverage in Visual Studio is the Properties window. If I just drag an unbound control out here, such as the text box here, and I want to start data binding this, I can go to the Properties window, select the property that I want to data bind, and go to this little square over to the right of the input here. If I click on that, you can see a context menu comes up that includes Create Data Binding. If I click on that, I get a dialog here that lets me start to specify how I want to hook up the data binding. At the top, you can see is a drop-down that lets you pick what kind of source to use. Data context is the default, and if there is a design time data context available, such as the one shown here, you can see that it knows about this customer list, and this is because the grid that this text box sits within has a data context set using design time data, which we'll get more into later in the module. So I could just pick the property over on the right here, and that's setting the path property of the binding that's going to result from this. I could also do element name bindings, relative source bindings, and static resource or source bindings by selecting those here. And when I do, then the inputs change to let me pick from what's out there that I can select as the element name and what property on that element to use to set the path. We'll just use data context here and say first name as our property. Down at the bottom, you can see if there are converters out there. You can either add one dynamically here and it'll let you go create the class and create it as a resource, or if there's ones already in the resource dictionary, it'll show them here. And then the more settings expands and shows all those other properties we covered in a previous module for things like string format, the mode property, the update source trigger, fallback values, target null values, and so on. A bunch of these properties on the right have to do with validation, which we'll cover in a later module. So once we click OK there, if we go and inspect the XAML, we can see here is our text box, and all it was really doing there is creating a binding. And you can see sometimes it does a little bit strange bindings. Really all we needed was first name here, but it had / first name. So ultimately, once you get comfortable with bindings, I generally find it's just as productive to type the code in the XAML editor as to use the properties window. But that may be a more expeditious path for you when you're getting familiar with the syntax.